We are live. So welcome everybody. There's a few people here already, and that's interesting, and I like that. I want to give a big welcome to John Fiamengo. Thanks for John for showing up to DragBoss Garage. I appreciate that. I want to give a shout out to my family, Andrea, Izzy, and Elena. Thank you for giving me the time to do this. And you too, John, to take away from your family, because we have our own lives, and to do things like this, as you'll see, as you've watched us go through this, it's not a quick click and play. There's a lot of planning involved. A lot of things have to be updated and uploaded. So I appreciate the time my family gives me to do this. Big shout out to you guys who are here. We can see the comments. John, you can't see this, but we'll see. There's about 3 or 4 people that just started lingering in.
Okay.
Bruce Culligan, he's here. Called again. So it's hard for me to see the screen, actually. That's why I tried to move up a little bit closer. Anthony Iacovino. What's going on, Anthony? Hi, Tim. Good to see you. He runs the Shelby Museum in Las Vegas. So actually, you got a Shelby shirt on, don't you?
Yeah, and I just visited that about 2 months ago. I was there for a week. I went there 2 days in a row. I had a great time at the museum.
Nice. So I'll kind of give you guys a little bit of an update of how this all came to be. So you guys know I'm into Pro Stock, and I really got a few of those videos cooking right now. The Cougar's kind of taken priority. I haven't been around to answer messages or comments because, I've been working on this deal for 5 years, and it's to the point where it's so close, and I get obsessed with stuff, and I just got to get things done. So I kind of don't look at the internet, don't get on Facebook too much, don't get involved with any of that kind of stuff. So I kind of been lax with DragBoss Garage, but I'm back to full steam. You'll see once you start seeing the videos of where I'm at. And Anthony says that he builds Super Snakes. So that's cool. We love those cars.
Very cool.
So how it happened was the videos I put up, like I said, Pro Stock is really my forte. I really get into that aspect of it. I'm going to bring it back to life, so to speak, and make a video record of history as much as I can. And that includes talking to people that have been there, that have done the work, the pioneers from the past that I can get a hold of, like you, John, that lived this, and that's what we're going to talk about. Because a lot of guys that we're having on here, some of them, another guy named Tom Steele. Now, he's lived there back in the day. He's been involved with a bunch of Pro Stock teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so some guys get this and some guys don't. Some guys never had the opportunity to see that. So hopefully I can bring this back into a video format and record history for others to enjoy. So I'll kind of tell you how it worked. I have the YouTube here, DragBoss Garage, and affiliated with it is my YouTube or my email. And it's thpa351@gmail. So people ask questions. I say, listen, just email me because sometimes you can't answer in the comments. And John must have saw my email. And the next thing I know, he sends me this email and tells me about a Pro Stock Mustang 2 that he built, a 1978 model. I started reading and I started getting into it, and I started hearing some of the people he was associated with. I'm like, wow, this is pretty good. And I don't know what happened after that. Next thing I know, it steamrolled into a whole plethora of pictures, because what he did was he recorded this. Now, he built this car. It was a 78 Mustang 2, and so he built it around 79 or something. We'll let him fill that in.
Started in 77 and then finished about, yeah.
Okay. So he started doing it in 77. And what he did, he's like me and probably you guys, I record everything in picture so I can go back and look, because my memory is kind of lame sometimes. And I forgot. It took me some time on the Cougar just to figure out where the darn wires went because I hadn't seen it. So pictures, especially with a cell phone, are so helpful now. What you did, you didn't have cell phones. You had the old Snap-Rolla Kodak, 35 millimeter or whatever it was, and recorded it. So let's talk about how you started. In 72, you told me you went to work for a Lincoln Mercury dealer. I can't remember the name. So why don't you start from there, John?
You got it. First, I want to give you a special thanks and to all your fans. Tim doing this Pro Stock memorabilia has been phenomenal. I mean, the Boss 351 Cleveland was just an incredible motor. And the decade of the 70s, it was really a dominant motor. And the famous guys, the legends that came before us, I just love that he's bringing this up. And I especially wanted to thank you, Tim, for doing this with me, not only the Zoom, but my special that you did for me. This is a part of my life that never had any closure. because I didn't 100% finish the car, and I'm not one of those guys that doesn't usually finish things. I always do. So I really appreciate you doing this. But basically, I'm from a little town in San Pedro, California. I was teasing Tim that people that look that up, it will say San Pedro, but when you're born there, we call it Pedro, and you're a Pedro boy if you're born there, no matter if you've left for 30 years. When I come back into town, you're either a Pedro boy or a Pedro girl, or you're not if you're not born there. And it's a small little blue collar town, and it's amazing how many fast street rods we had in that town. I had wrote down a few that the Hurt brothers, their dad owned a Shell station. They had Mopars. They had a 383 Charger and a 446 pack Challenger. Johnny Crawford had a 57 Chevy 427. Loose Caboose was a big block 55 Chevy. It was in a lot of magazines. My Jerry Craycraft had a Rat motor and a Camaro. Bob Thiedemann had a Z28 Camaro. Jerry Murat, my friend, had a 327 and a little Toyota pickup, the small pickups back in the day. And of course, I had my Pinto with my 302. So there was a lot of fast cars in town. But I can honestly say, without any bragging, I was one of the only, and by far the fastest Ford in town. So my nickname kind of became Dino Don Nicholson was my hero. I loved the guy. We went to the drags all the time. My wife at the time, Mary, my friends, Jerry, Larry, we used to go all the time. And in California, you got the Winter Nationals and the World Finals, Orange County Raceway. So you saw all the major ones. That's two meets in the same, area.
Let me interrupt you for a second, John, because here's what we can do for the people that are here watching.
Okay.
I took all the pictures you sent me and uploaded them.
Okay.
Now I can put them up in the corner. Like if you see in the corner, that looks like your Pinto racing a 55 Loose Caboose. Yeah, it's hard.
That's the Loose Caboose. That's right.
So here's what I can do. And this is, I'll put these pictures up, but I won't leave them up because I don't want to, people like to see us talking our inflections and our voice. But what you're saying, here's your Pinto right here.
Right. So that picture was taken by a photographer for Peterson Publishing, which did a high performance Ford magazine. Okay. That Pinto made the cover. That was filmed on the hill in Palos Verdes overlooking the peninsula. Obviously, it looks different now. That was back in '72. And then he also took the pictures in front of the Torrance Police Department with the Loose Caboose and I. And then also on 19th Street with the orange Z28 and myself. That was Bob Thiedemann. So that was how we got started in that. And but the Ford thing started because of the fact that Dino Don was my hero. Don and John kind of rhymed. I did Fords, he did Fords, and my friends just started nicknaming me, Dino J or Dino John. And I had license plates. I think you have my special, you put it up there, Dino J, and I still have those hanging in my garage. So that's how that started. But I am in no means in the league of Dino Don. He was a legend, and he's a very special guy to me.
Now that Pinto ran what? This engine right here?
Yeah, that was a 302. Fairly well built. Top loader transmission, 488 gears with a 9-inch rear. Ironically, a 9-inch Ford rear end from a 57 Ford Fairlane, I had read an article about it, fits in like it was made for the Pinto. You don't have to do anything. The emergency brakes line up, the dowel pins on the perch. It was like a total easy swap, but you couldn't have a strong rear end. And that ran about 1220s on the street tires and with slicks, high 11s. So it was a fast street car for the 70s, for a high school car. I was 18 years old. It was the first car I bought. And as you said in my special, like a fool, I spent a lot of money and hopped up the 4-cylinder first, blew it up the first time at Lions Drag Strip. And I said, we need to put a V8 in this. And all my friends said, you're not gonna be able to fit a V8 in a Pinto. And that's all I got to hear. Then I'm gonna prove them wrong. And went at this company, Herbert and Meek, that you mentioned. Yeah. They made a kit out of it. And that's how the Pinto became kind of a fast car in town.
Now, this was taken at the police station. It's up in the corner, but here's a big shot of it.
That's right, the one in front of Torrance Police Department.
Okay, and that's the 55 Chevy there.
Yeah, Loose Caboose.
Did you beat it?
Well, to be honest, we didn't actually race. That was a staging thing. We had to go into the police office and let them know what we were doing because we probably would all got hauled off into jail. Okay. So we said, look, we're going to pretend like we're getting ready to do a street race. And they let us, do that. A couple of the policemen were outside kind of laughing at it, but we didn't actually race that night, to be honest.
Nice. There's about 48 people here, John, listening to your story.
Good.
That's nice. Thank you.
Good. John. So I started at Peyton Lincoln Mercury, as you said. My owner, a little bit of trivia, Peyton Kramer was the owner. his previous job, he was the chief financial officer of Carroll Shelby Enterprises when they were at the LA airport. So wow. He had a real strong performance background, and his financial partner with that dealership was Peter Revson, who was a Formula One driver, and his parents owned the Revlon Industries. When I started as a lot attendant, I got to take him to the airport. Actually, Peyton sent me out there to go pick him up. Here I'm, 18-year-old kid, and I'm sitting with Peter Revson. It was pretty cool. But
they own Revlon then? That his parents owned Revlon?
Revlon Industries is the cosmetics. That was
yeah.
But their name was Revson. Yeah.
Okay.
And he was a really nice guy too. He got killed in South Africa, as you guys, if you know some of Formula One, very sad young guy. But so I'm going to say I lost my train of thought here. Oh, I was going to say kind of an interesting too. I was a heavy line mechanic, as I mentioned, which is the internal engine, manual transmissions, clutches, rear end. And then I was also the Pantera mechanic because Peyton took on the Pantera line, which is, the De Tomasos with the 351s in them. And Lee Hunter, who was a pretty well-known Ford Pro Stocker, he was a heavy line mechanic at Santa Ana Lincoln Mercury, about 40 minutes from where I was at. And of course, we all know the legend Bob Glidden was a heavy line mechanic at a dealership in Indianapolis. So ironic that, that type of mechanic got us into that realm of racing.
Nice.
But we went to the drags all the time. My first wife, a little different in the video, I was married to my first wife in 1976. Her name was Mary. And as you can imagine, I got married very young. I was 21 years old. And once you plan the wedding and go on the honeymoon, maybe get an apartment, you could probably guess that maybe the first question or two your wife's going to ask is, maybe when are we going to start saving for a house and maybe starting to have a family. So I gave a third choice. How about we build a Pro Stock instead?
Nice. I like it.
So considering that option, she was very supportive. Went along with me to the drags with my friends all the time. We went down to San Diego to check the progress on the chassis at Willie Rells, which we'll get to in a minute. Help me on the car, work on it. She would take a lot of those pictures you saw of me around the car. She took those. So I wanted to make sure I give her proper credit. And she's the mother of my two older daughters, Jamie and Tracy. So they're 39 this month. And then my younger daughter with my current wife, Jeanette, we've been married 27 years. Tani is with that. So we have 3 daughters total in the family and 5 grandkids, as you pointed out before.
So I kind of twisted it or missed when we talked originally, because the way I looked at it was like she, Jeanette was the one we were talking about with this whole situation.
Now, I realized we were talking, and I was comparing pictures with you and your wife and children, and somehow that got sent. I married Jeanette in 1995, and of course the Pro Stock was 1978. So I didn't want to, be disrespectful. My first wife, Mary, was the one that was all involved with the car and had our first 2 children. So when we sold the car and bought our first house and had kids, that's how that worked.
Okay. All right.
Then let's see. So we started the Pro Stock in mid-76. I started collecting the engine parts, as you showed on my thing. Remember the class
right here.
All the engine. Yeah, there you go. Being that I worked at Lincoln Mercury, I got all the parts at like 5% over cost. So I bought a brand new Boss 351 block, the crank, the heads, all the associated parts. And I had a few small sponsors, which were a big help. A service center, a well-known speed shop in Torrance. He sponsored me for the Goodyear slicks, the Moroso racing tires, and the 4 Krager racing wheels. I heard about Willie Rells as far as a chassis. Obviously, I didn't have unlimited money, but I always like to do the best stuff I can. So I looked into 2 good chassis builders in California, Ron Butler and Don Ness, I'm sure you've heard of.
Yes,
and
I heard
of course,
of
Hardy in Texas. Hardy got famous. You did a special on Bob Glidden's, and they did his Fairmont in 14 days. That's unheard of. I mean, he had almost like a semi-assembly line type of process, where with Willie, this is more like a 6-month process. I wasn't so much needed it in a quick time as I wanted the best I could and could afford. But when I went to see his shop in San Diego, I was amazed. He is an absolute, or I don't know if he's still around, or was a master chassis builder and a welder like I've never seen. 2 of my friends are welders, and the beads look like he drew it with a pencil. He's just a master artist. So we went down there, and close to his shop, ironically, Crower Cams is in Chula Vista, just north of his shop, and Lenco Transmission is just south in National City. So he was kind of in the middle of those two. And he had a Pro Stock he built for a guy that was a contractor. And the guy built him a massive, beautiful shop. Like when you drove up to his house, it just looked like you were in a neighborhood. But when you went up in the driveway, there was this massive workshop in the back that could hold probably a dozen cars. And that's where he had all the chassis jigs and the welding. And he just did a beautiful, beautiful job. To correct one thing on the video, so Willie Rells is his name, R-E-L-L-S.
Yep.
He did the chassis and he did all the tin work. Krager, I think we mistakenly said he's the upholstery guy, but Willie Rells did all the aluminum work, the sheet metal work, and did a masterful job. The car
this is what you started with right here, right?
That's correct. He, some guys get a, panel by panel, or they order a white body. And he said, John, I can get you a clip for $350. It's a little more work to open up, but you have the structure that's stronger because the factory's spot welds in the area that you're not removing makes the structure a little more secure. So that was $350 for that whole thing. And he got that in San Diego and then had it delivered to his shop. And then, we started our design from there. Okay.
Wow. That's amazing. Then I kind of have all the pictures, not in perfect chronological order, but enough where we can, so the guys,
exactly,
because it's hard when you talk about it. If you can see a picture, I mean, it opens up everything. And I think that's
right.
a big difference.
So that's the picture of the clip there.
Yep. And then
what's your next one you want to show?
The thing that I got, you talked about racing with going to the races and seeing your guys like Dino Race and Bob Glitton and those guys. Now I know where you got your motor plate, because look at this. There's Dino's Mustang right there.
Exactly.
I didn't realize the plate was all drilled like that until you started talking about it.
Yeah, Willie did that on almost everything, as you notice. All the suspension brackets, he's always trying to lighten, but made out of strong materials. And the plating I did, if any of you guys have done car restoration, you're at a platers, thankfully near San Pedro. There's a lot of that type of business. But my 4-link suspension, my front A-arms, my Lakewood, there we go. My Lakewood bell housing, which, as everybody knows, come red. I had that stripped and done in CAD gold.
All this
Willie,
look at that.
The rules then was that the firewall and the floorboards had to be steel, not aluminum. So those are the ones that are cadmium gold plated. It's like a slightly different shade. But the aluminum work, that's all. And even the coil springs, you see, I had those plated.
Here it is right here.
Yeah, there you go. That's all aluminum. That's anodized.
All this.
And Willie Rells did all that tin work. I mean, like a magician. You've never seen a car in person at a drag race that looks like that. I'm telling you, he was great.
Wow. It's amazing.
Very, very lucky that I met him and got to know him personally.
Here's a picture with a radiator you talked about with the anodized front.
Yeah, now this is an interesting thing he did. That's a Corvette radiator, because at the time Ford didn't offer an aluminum radiator. So this is a Corvette aluminum radiator to be lightweight. He did that cool little bracket assembly. And on the bottom of the radiator, you can't see it in the photo, it's got 2 dowels sticking down about 1 inch long. And they go into brackets that he made that have rubber grommets, so there's no vibration. You just drop the radiator and the 2 dowels, flip over to the Zeus fastener panel, and that's it for the radiator. And of course the hoses. And it's got a Pinto rack and pinion steering, titanium steering shaft, Coney double adjustable coilovers, which were quite expensive at the time. In the 70s, those were about $500 a shock. I mean, I don't know, they're probably 10 times that now, but back then that was a lot for a shock absorber.
Let's see if we got some questions, because I see a bunch of comments. So there's 61 people here, John.
Okay.
We'll give us a couple shout outs. We'll see what people are asking here. Terry Grover's here. He's a great guy. Does some head porting. Trunk back Jim. See, now the funny thing is, and I've talked about this before, but sometimes in this whole time that you and I are talking about this, other guys are in here talking between themselves about talking about all kinds of things. So it's kind of cool. And I appreciate that, you guys being here, my subscribers. I just hit 15,000. So, and it's all for them being dedicated to DragBoss Garage.
That's great.
Patrick Adams Music says, hey, awesome job, John. Appreciate that. Rick Norrington said, that's a great picture. He's talking about the anodizing.
Great.
You must have went 100 times to the anodizer to get this stuff done.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If you've ever done plating, you can't imagine how many trips back and forth, and you find a little bracket you forgot to have chromed or anodized, and you're back up, to Gardena making a trip. But that's what I wanted to do.
And that's where you went to Gardena for the anodizing.
Anodizing and plating, yeah. Harbor City and Gardena are the 2 cities near San Pedro that there was a lot of industrial type companies like that. So that wasn't too hard to find, but you gotta drive over there on your lunch hour and that type of thing, because of the mechanics. So
Look at this picture. Tell me if you can see this one. There you are.
Yeah. Now, this is the one where you said I was being fit, which I did that at Willie's shop earlier.
Okay.
This one, to be honest with you, you said how I was, my vision was the car launching off the strip. That's what I was thinking of there. I'm sitting in that alley where I rented the garage, and I'm in my mind, I'm dreaming that I'm going to hit the throttle one day and I'm going to feel this thing come off the ground about 8 inches, even with wheelie bars. That's what, because we were already fitted, but that's a beautiful thing. And one thing, Simpson got us all the safety equipment, but I installed it all. They don't install the equipment. We did that. So he supplied the window net, the crash helmet, all the harnesses, the fuel safety cell, and the parachute. Interesting story. My uncle Frank, who was a banker at the time in San Pedro, he knew Bill Simpson. Bill Simpson had a dream to build not only a new shop for him, he built an area called Gasoline Alley. And all the shops in there rent from him. And there's, Earl Supply, racers, they rent things. And my uncle called up, and he wasn't a race fan. He just was my uncle. And he said, "Hey, Bill, my cockamamie nephew, he's in all this racing stuff. I don't know what he's spending all this money for, but he's doing something called Pro Stock. If there's anything you make that could help him, I'd appreciate it." And Bill called me up, and I gave him the list of, safety-wise, bang, for free, which was really nice, but I installed it. But if you went back to that picture one second, Tim, you see one thing that Willie came up that was clever. The window net, most guys used to have like these nylon straps or a Velcro to hold it down. I got a seatbelt assembly at Lincoln. He welded the female buckle onto the roll bar and the male onto the bottom rod of the window net. We adjusted the tension, and it just clicks in and out. It was really clean.
Well, let me tell you something. I mean, that's how all window nets are done for the most part. So whether he innovated it and made it, but that's how
I don't know that. I just know I saw a lot of them at the racetrack that didn't look like that, and we thought this was a cleaner way to get on and off real quick. And
that's how they are now, at least for the last
that's good.
10 or 15 years, maybe longer.
So when speaking of Gasoline Alley, and that's where Simpson was, Don Krager Interiors, I've never seen a better upholstery guy. He had a shop in there, and he's the one that did the interior. So not the tin, but he did the interior. And as you can see, most guys had padding on their roll bar, and they would tape it or what have you. Mine is all tuck and rolled, snaps. The epoxy felt you were talking about, it's called like trunk felt. It's pretty thick. And he put that on the rear panel behind the taillights. And when you pull that off, not only you have access to the taillight, but that's also where the parachute comes through. And I don't think you can see it in any of my pictures, but what would normally be a headliner in most Pro Stocks above your head, it's just bare tin metal. Okay. And he cut it and glued that into the roof, so it looked like a finish, more like a passenger car kind of look.
Let me give you this.
What's that?
How about that?
Here he's got, those are all wool carpeting like you see in the Cobras. He did the upholstery on the seats, the tuck and roll on the roll bars. And then the door panels and all the tub work and everything inside, that's vinyl. That's like it would be in an upholstery, like on a Mustang or something. Okay. And he would cut that out and glue that over the beading on the tin work. And then he made the custom door panels. And I'm telling you, it's still lightweight, but yet it really looked like a show car type of finish. You know what I mean? Instead of just most guys just paint the door panels black, and that's all you're required to do by the rules. But I said, that's not me. I'm really detailed, and that's what I wanted to do. But while I was at Krager's, which again was in Gasoline Alley, another trivia, right next door to him, guess who rents the shop? Dale Armstrong. He used to go by AA Dale. He had an alcohol rail, and then he was later the crew chief for Kenny Bernstein's funny car. I met him while the guy's doing my upholstery. You talk about a nice guy. I'm a nobody, and here's Kenny Bernstein. I didn't even know if I should say hello. He must have talked to me for like a half hour about the car. Nicest guy you could meet. And, I met him by chance just because his shop was right next door to Krager's.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh my God. Now here's another picture. We were talking about the rear. So let me see if I can pull this up, and you can kind of we can talk about this one.
Okay.
Here it comes now.
Okay. Now, he did the X bracing, which, as you said before, wasn't as popular then, but it's a stronger cage. And that's why Willie did that. But all these little panels, you see, that's vinyl Naugahyde on there over the panels to make it look like it's upholstered, but that's just aluminum right underneath it. And those little Zeus fasteners, you pop off that panel, and now you adjust your Coney shocks. There's another one I know you have that's over the fuel cell. You pop those two, you have access to the fuel cell. You pop off the ones in the corner, you have access to the batteries. Just, a half a turn, boom, and the panel's off. But it looks totally clean.
What was on the wheel tubs?
Vinyl upholstery, vinyl.
Vinyl. Okay. Okay.
Just like you would have on a, you know, like on a door panel, but no padding, just right onto the aluminum.
Now here's the rear you were talking about before, the rear end.
Right.
You can see the access panel up there for the shocks.
That's correct. And then that's the 9-inch rear, 567 Schaefer Pro gears, Summers Brothers spool and axles, 35 splines. When you saw those axles in person, I got to tell you, you know, on a big Ford, you know, a 31 spline is considered the biggest they had from the factory. Sure. Then companies make 33 and 35. 35, I don't have the measurement in front of me, but I mean, it was the better part at 2 inches, and the axles are only like 18 inches long, you know. I mean, you couldn't break one of those, I think, unless you had a blown Hemi, you know, dragster going through it. There was really a bulletproof rear end. And Jack Christman, famous for 9-inch Fords, he had a patented billet nose piece. I think you have a photo of that, where it gives the pinion substantially more support and an extra bearing. And then a load bolt for the ring. He had all, there's the fuel cell, and you can see the panels are removed.
Yep.
The battery covers.
Wow. I just can't get over the anodizing and the tin work. It just, I had to look at it again. It's so amazing.
Just looking at the pictures, I'm tired of all the driving right now. I'm reminded, I was younger then, I had more energy, I think.
How long did it take to do this? What kind of time period? Are we talking a year, 6 months, a year?
I would say that, well, I started collecting the engine parts and stuff. And again, that was money based. If somebody handed me 35 grand, I mean, I could have done it obviously a lot faster, but right. I started with engine parts, collecting the stuff, but we didn't buy the car till 78. So I would say it was probably about a 2-year project.
Wow.
And the thing that, was the game changer for me that I had mentioned to you before in our talks. NHRA had changed the rules to where a Pro Stock had to be within 3 years of the current year you're racing. That was a game changer for me, because here at the time, I thinking, okay, I know this is taking longer than I want, but as long as I get the car I want, what do I care? But then when they did that, well, now all of a sudden, 2 years, my car's completely outdated, and I got to start all over again. It took me all these years to get this. And that's when I decided to sell, because I knew I could never keep up financially with every 3 years building a new Pro Stock. So that's when we sold it.
Someone's got a question here. I'll read it to you so other people that are not watching this can hear it.
Okay.
You could probably see it. Rick Norrington. On the interior picture, looking at the roll bar, what's up with a bar that's around the head level towards the dash? Looks like it'd be difficult getting in and out.
Let's go back to that picture then, maybe.
So let me go back to that, and we'll see if I can find it, because it's
okay. So he's talking about the upper bar.
Yeah.
So the one with the window net connect to it, you'll see a push pin right at the corner. You pull that out, and that padded bar goes down to the floor.
Okay.
So then when the window net is up, you can get in, you know, quite easily. Not as easy as a passenger car, but
so it swings out. It swings out.
It swings downward. It goes down to the floor.
Down. Okay.
Downward. Yeah.
I've never seen that before. That's kind of neat. All right, Rick, there you go. There's your answer. Let's see if there's another question that we need here while we're talking. Here's another one. It says, hi, guys, 6% recycled. Hello, everyone. VRM. Hello, Tim and John and everybody else. These are all guys. These are all my regular subscribers that come. So I like to recognize them, that they're here, so they know we're paying attention to them, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here.
That's right.
Hello.
If you weren't here, I wouldn't be here.
Hello, Mrs. DragBoss and the Bossettes. That's what I call my wife, Mrs. DragBoss. She started her own channel a couple weeks ago and has a video she's getting ready to put up. She films me working around, laying around, and doing work, you know, when I don't expect it. She is shooting. And they call my kids the Bossettes. So
the Bossettes.
Yeah, so I got to give them a shout out there. So hi, guys. Hey, Tim, I tuned in late. I've owned a couple Cobra 2s. We'll definitely watch the video later. You know, and that's the thing. You got to remember, the muscle car era was kind of at the 78. Not a lot of people cared for these Mustang 2s. You know, they just didn't have that full-size feel.
Right.
So not until a Fox body came out when the Surge came back again. But they're kind of like not sought after, especially the Cobras. You know what I'm talking about? With all the stripes and the hood scoops and stuff. I still like them, though. They still look cool. So thanks, guys. Let's get back to some pictures and see what we can do. Kind of getting towards the motor now. What else? Anything else on the car, John?
I think that's it pretty much on the car. Unless anybody has any questions about, I think I answered everything. It was a 4-link rear suspension.
Yeah.
The coilovers in the front. We went over the rear end.
2 years to build. Now we're talking about 2 years of
the
this.
whole car, but it took Willie Rells about 6 months for the chassis.
Okay. Okay.
So once he finished with the chassis, then we towed it up to my garage. I told you I was renting in San Pedro, and I think you have a picture of where I spray painted. That might be a good one to pull up.
Yeah. You mean this?
Yeah, my first wife Mary was nice enough to take the picture. I'm telling you that roll, those tubes, you could never paint that with a conventional spray gun like you paint a car with an airline, because you're crawling in and out of these tubes to get all 360 degrees of the round angles. So a company in Gasoline Alley made this epoxy primer, gloss paint, and you could do it covered very well, and it flowed like enamel does. When you spray it on, and you might see like a little overspray type of look, it right in front of your eyes, it just gets flattens out like gloss water. It's beautiful. But it took 18 cans. My index finger, I thought the bones were going to break. And then when I got done, even though I had a mask on, she took that picture. There was so much overspray because you had to leave the garage door closed, or wind would have come in and got dirt on it, you know. So
sure.
How I lived through that and didn't get asphyxiated, that's a story by itself. But that came out really good. And then we towed it to my friend Larry Famigetti, and his brother James own a welding shop in Harbor City. And we didn't have the parachute at that time. So once I got it from Simpson, instead of going all the way back to Willie, my friend's brother James welded a heliarc just like the way Willie did it. The brackets at the rear that goes through that taillight panel. So the parachute had a push pin through it.
Right there.
If you have, that's the chute. And if you have that other picture that shows the inside, that felt, you'll see the strap coming through with a massive pull pin, and that's what holds it to the chassis, so that when you
like right there,
you can't see it in that photo, but I know you have one that has the felt.
I probably don't have it though.
Okay, no problem. But that's what that was for. So he welded that there, and of course I had to do the touch-up paint on that bracket, and then we started doing, you know, all the rest of the suspension and the other parts at my garage.
How far did you have to drive then? Because you said it was you spent a long time driving back and forth. How many miles was it?
Well, to go to Willie Rells from San Pedro, that's almost a 2-hour drive each way. And we would go almost every Saturday because he's closed on Sundays, but he was nice enough to meet, you know, because I was really wanting to be on top of it. That was one of the reasons I also didn't pick like a Hardy chassis, because I'm not going to Texas every week, you know. So here I could drive and really, you know, have a hands-on type of feel. And if there was any questions, John, we're thinking about this, or what do you think about that? You know, I had a lot to say about it. In fact, the rules only required at the time that you had a square, like a tube going left to right by the windshield, by the deck lid, the left door, and the right door. So there's like a square cage around you for a rollover. At Pomona, one guy rolled over in a Pro Stock, and luckily he was okay. But I remember when we saw the car, the center of the roof was collapsed big time, and it was amazing that he didn't get any neck injury. And I remember that weekend I went to Willie's and I said, you know what, the rules don't call for it. I want a diagonal one going from the left front to the right rear, like a just in case, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And he added that, you know, because I just felt it was a safe thing to do. Sometimes the rules don't catch up with it, you know, right away, as you know.
Wow. Now go to your shop, to your garage that you rented. How far was that from where you lived?
Maybe 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
That's just in San Pedro, but just in a different part of town. It was an older lady that my mom knew. Her husband had died. The garage was empty. She didn't have any car, didn't drive. So I rented the garage from her. It was it was a 1-car garage, but it was a little wider than most 1-cars, which was great. And then I put these massive locks and hasps on it, you know, because I had my car down there, and I'd be down there all the time working. You know, when you're trying to build a Pro Stock, I can tell you that it's like a drug addiction. I mean, you have the vision, and you just need money, money, money. I mean, that's all there is to it. If somebody handed me 50 grand, hey, I could have had that thing done in 6 months.
Right.
But as I was a mechanic, I was working as many hours as I could possibly work. I'm staying later for extra jobs to make more income. I'm doing side jobs on the weekend. People need brakes or a clutch or something, because this is what I did. And another thing that got me a lot of money that helped me was, and dealers would never let you do this now, but they were nice about it there. Let's say a car comes in to be diagnosed and it's got a blown motor.
Yep.
The guy doesn't want to fix it. It's too much money. So the first rule of etiquette is the dealership has the right to offer to buy it. And the used car manager says, look, I don't want to buy one with an engine. By the time I rebuild out, I'm going to be way out of cost. So then I'm allowed to go up to the client and say, how about if I buy it for $800 as is? Okay. Then I fix the motor, paint job, whatever it needed, and I'm selling it for $3,500. All of a sudden I was picking up some good cash towards chassis stuff on that. That was a big help. I did about 7 cars through that time period. So I was working a lot. You know, it was lucky we didn't have my daughters then, because I would have been a horrible dad not spending enough time with them, because you're just trying to get money to finish that thing. Like
what kind of cars? What were you talking?
Well, one of them was a '68 Cougar.
Yep.
One of them was a Capri with a blown motor.
Yep.
I had another one that came in that had a transmission problem, but the paint job was horrible, and they decided they wanted to trade it in. The used car manager didn't want to do it, so I painted it there. We had a body shop, so I was able to use the booth on a weekend. I paid for all the supplies, of course. You know, it was a Lincoln Mercury store, so they're obviously primarily Lincoln Mercury products.
Okay. Nice. I like that.
And in fact, my first wife, Mary, I had a picture I sent you of a blue '68 Cougar. That was one that came in with a motor problem. I totally restored that car, and then we painted it a really beautiful metallic blue that was popular in that era. And that was her car, and that was, you couldn't get a cleaner 60. I think I sent it to you because I knew you were doing the Cougar race car.
Yeah. Yep.
It was just a passenger car, but it was beautiful.
Yeah, I love Cougars. There's no doubt about that.
That was a trade in there. You know, Peter Revson, I mentioned earlier, I forgot a trivia. His sister was married to Harry Gardino. He was an actor that was in all the Dirty Harry movies, the Lieutenant Drebin, the kind of a New York guy.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
He was married to Revson's sister, so he was one of our clients. And also Jack Webb from Dragnet was a client.
Jack
he lived
Webb.
in Long Beach.
Wow.
Sorry, these little, I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but these little things are coming into my head.
I'm the same way, and I bet you these guys on here are the same way. Let's see what they got to say, because I think what we're going to do is get into the meat and potatoes, the Cleveland, baby. So let's see.
That's my baby.
How about this one? You're going to like this one. John Fiamengo. My Dino John is very detailed in everything he does. Very proud to be his best friend and wife. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you, Jeanette. We appreciate it. And there's another one. Greg here. Anomalous. $5 from the super chat. Thank you. The 3-year rule was due to Bob Glidden's '70 Mustang that dominated with a long wheelbase. Can't get enough of DBG. Hang on, I got to turn the heat on. Thank you.
He's right. He's right.
I appreciate that, guys.
The rule was good to keep the bodies current, but for me, it was that was a death sentence.
It was. I mean, really, because then by the time you're done, you have what, 1 year?
What do you get? 1 year out of it, and then I could have only raced in gas class, but it wouldn't be pro stock, and I wanted to be in a professional class, you know, like Dino did.
Thank you, Anomalous. We appreciate it. How about this one? Let's see. Yeah, roll cage is the hardest thing to paint.
I'm telling you.
That's no doubt. Or put interior. If you watch my video, when I put
I saw you do the interior.
I just did that just to show people what it takes, and that was like an hour. It was actually like 2 hours climbing in and around that roll bar to fit the carpet, the panels. And it was insane. So I like this one.
I couldn't have painted that thing now, I'll tell you. I was in my 20s then, so I obviously was more flexible and a lot skinnier.
Yeah. Patrick Adams music. Dino J. There you go. Appreciate it. So let's see. Now we're going to talk about the Cleveland, because that's really, you know.
That's my thing. I'll tell you, I know that you got to have a good car, you got to have a good chassis, you got trans, rear end, everything has to do its job. But to me, the motors are everything. I'm a motor guy. You know, that's what I did as a living. To me, that's the heart of the car, and the engine is my baby. To go a little detail on that, as you had mentioned earlier, just one thing I want to correct. Paul Bedoin, who owned Pro Stock Engineering, I think you referred to him as Pro Stock Paul.
Yes.
I met him, like I said, when I had my Pinto. I had an Iscadarian cam in there. They were local in Gardena. And I just didn't feel like it was going as fast as I thought it should. And I heard about him specializing in Ford. So I went to his shop in Paramount, which is about a 40-minute drive. And he had a small place at the time. I would say it's probably, you could put 2 cars, one behind the other one. It was about that size of a shop. And he had a partner at the time. And if I'm not incorrect, I think his name was Richard Cabral. He had a Maverick, and they ran a 427 FE in that. Very fast car.
Wow.
And Paul was really knowledgeable on Ford products, but especially FE. That was like his baby. But anyway, I heard about him. I met him. I brought the Pinto out there, and he suggested a crane cam. And I remember, dyno ran crane, all the FE Fords. That was a really popular cam at the time. So I let him. He picked a grind, selected it, sold it to me, and I put it in. I cannot believe the difference in power that made. And so right then I knew that, he was very sharp and he knew a lot of stuff about it. And then later he moved into a much larger shop in Paramount. I don't know what the square footage is, but I mean, it was huge compared to this. And he didn't have the partner anymore. It was just him. And so I became like, a good client of his. I'd buy things. And when I was building the Pro Stock, he helped me a lot in the fact that he let me use his shop to build and assemble a motor. And in the video, I think mistakenly, it was I built the motor. Paul didn't build the motor. I built the motor at his shop. But he was very instrumental. I mean, there was things that maybe if I wasn't sure or I wanted to run something by him, he's there. He's got a lot of knowledge. What do you think about this part? What do you think about that? And the work that he did for me, which was great, he kind of sponsored me for the machine work, which the block work he sent out to Ed Pink Racing, did his machine work, which did beautiful work. The crank we sent out to Velasco. And that in the video we showed where we cut down the journals down to the small block Chevy rods, because you're using those honking aluminum rods. So then you get a tighter circle, which gets more power. Yep. He machined and did the lifter bronze bushings, which reduces oil further, and they're self-oiling. That was a great installation. And he also did the milling of the bottom of the Y-end tunnel ram, which was a nice touch. And a lot of guys you've had photos on, I see they did that as well. Because the factory Boss 351 intake gasket was a metal valley pan.
Right.
One thing I loved about the Cleveland working on, even when I was a mechanic, is that no water goes through the intake manifold. So when you pull it off, you don't get antifreeze going everywhere. Oh, yeah. So by milling the center of that Y-end out, that heat from the oil going on that lifter galley doesn't touch the runners to increase the temperature of the gas. So He did that. And again, he dialed in the cam for me. He degreed it. He was really good at that. But other than that, I built the whole motor at his shop. And I bought all the parts from him. That was a deal as well. So instead of going to a speed shop, he was making profit on the parts. So my Venolia pistons with gas ports, 13-to-1, Childs and Albert's aluminum rod. The crank, as I said, went to Velasco. We had seal power rings with an 031 Dyke top ring. The rockers were crane roller rockers and a crane billet cam. And I mean, the 8620 billet with the copper plating in between the lobes, really cool looking. Massive size cam. It was 334 duration and a 775 lift. It was monstrous. And so the cam and the rockers were crane, but at the time, Crowder roller lifters and the Vasco Jet springs were considered the top of the line. So we had the Crowder train on that. The push rods, I think they're still the best made today. Smith Brothers, nobody makes a better push rods, and quite a bit larger, 7/16. Then Pro Stock Paul made custom chrome moly guide plates for that much bigger of a push rod, because Fords are 5/16. We had the Jomar stud girdles on the rockers. He made those beautiful one-piece stamped rocker arms, and that we had them anodized blue to be Ford color. And these are products that he sold in his catalog as well. I mean, it wasn't like he just made it for me.
Now, let me clarify so these guys know. When he keeps talking Pro, that's PSE. Back in the 70s, it was called PSE, Pro Stock Engineering.
Pro Stock Engineering in Paramount, California.
And it was owned by Paul Bedouin.
Yeah. Right? Bedoin, I think it's pronounced.
Bedoin.
Bedoin. And I got him, he did a lot of help. He wanted to get a Lincoln Continental Mark V. And so in 78, while I was still at Peyton, I got him a super deal on a Cartier model is what he wanted. It was like a silver gray, and I remember him driving that out there. He was really excited. But he had a beautiful shop. He had a lot of Ford parts, and he made a lot of Ford racing stuff, custom stuff, especially the FE engines. The Cleveland, I think a lot of the Cleveland stuff, he was doing on my motor, quite frankly, because he didn't have a lot of Cleveland business in there. It was more Windsors and FE, but Pro Stock was so popular with the Cleveland that naturally that was a logical thing for him. And I'm a tool fanatic, okay? I mean, if I need a tool, I buy it. And all my stuff is Snap-on. And in the 70s, I bet I have 45,000 of Snap-on in the 70s pricing. So probably 100 grand now. His shop made my 40 grand look like a lunchbox. He had like 3 Snap-on rollaways with everything you can find in a Snap-on catalog. He had it. I'll tell you, that was pretty amazing. So I never brought my toolbox up to his shop because, I mean, he had everything. That was really a nice, and he had a designated engine room that was very clean and quiet. That's the room that you saw that little boy. I think that was
right there.
I think it was his girlfriend's son or nephew, and he just, you know, he was there and he was standing by the engine. I said, "Here, stand there. I'll get a picture of you."
And that's a good picture. You can see that the lifter valley's been all polished there.
Yeah, I did all that. I did all the lifter gallery polishing and deburring. I deburred all the main webs under the bottom side of the engine to reduce any chance of crack. I used a bottom tap on every threaded hole on the entire block, you know, before we sent it out for cleaning. And, you know, he also made all the chrome moly head bolts and main bolt studs. He also supplied, as you mentioned before, you probably have a picture there, the billet aluminum main caps, which he felt not only help with vibration absorption, but the shock of when you shift in the gears. He said the aluminum is very forgiving on absorbing the shock. So they were massively thick and 4-bolt mains, as you see. But I know some guys run, you know, the factory cast irons but we did the billet aluminum ones on that 7075 T6.
Wow, that's amazing. And then we didn't show this one, but there's the gear drive.
That's a Mylodon gear drive, and we had a Mylodon rear sump racing pan.
Let's see if I got a picture of that. Kind of see it there. You can see it down here in the bottom.
Yeah, you've got another one where it's got the rear. I think it's the one in my dad's garage where you talked about my friend building the engine cart. You'll see it. Yeah, that's a Y-end aluminum water pump. We had the Excel BEI, and if you look at that close, you'll see that's got the cable tack drive.
Yes.
I'm telling you, there's nothing that when you used to go to the drags and you see a guy that had a cable tack drive and watching that tack needle bouncing when they're idling with those radical cams, because an electronic tack kind of averages out at a bit. That thing is just moving everywhere. When you whap it, it was just so instantaneous. That was really cool in the day. I don't know if they probably don't run that now, but
I don't know if they do. That's a good point. I don't know that they do anymore. Let me see who's here, because there's some more people that say hi. Let's see. Johnny Honda, what's your opinion on Cleveland's oiling system at 6,500 and 8,000? That's an easy one to answer. 6,500, you don't have to worry about anything. Once you get to $8,000, once really you get past 69 to $7,000, you better have a big pump, or big pan, 9-quart, 8-quart pan, and then I use restrictors if you're going to go $8,000.
Yeah, on mine we did at the time, and I know Kasi helped develop that too with Moroso. We had the Moroso oil restriction kit that we put in. We did on the when Paul got we did Federal Mogul cam bearings, TRW clevites for the mains and rods. I guess the cams, they felt them Federal's a little harder. It worked better on the cams, but he also had those sent out to Velasco, and they did 360-degree oiling on the main bearings. So there's a hole every certain amount of degrees to hold oil when the engine's turned off.
Yes. And
then on the oil pump, which he helped me blueprint, we did a 100-pound relief spring, which everybody does. It was a Melling high volume. Blueprinted all the inside. Then he liked to double plate the bottom, so there's no flex whatsoever. And then he made a oil drive that was in his catalog, which is like a half-inch thick, because you know oil drives on a Ford can, when you put that kind of oil pan pressure, you can wind those Allen things up in the center very easily. He also made a real nice billet aluminum distributor clamp. If you know from Ford, it's a very small little clamp that kind of hits the outer edge of the distributor to hold it in the block, and his went around half of the distributor. So he said that doesn't cock the distributor, it keeps it down centered. These are all little parts he had in his catalog, and I would buy, you know, all those things because I wanted the best I could get.
John Salvatierra, thank you, John. We appreciate the $10. Thank you so much. Hi, Tim. Thank you, John. What a beautiful car, craftsmanship. Tim, FYI, the Revson family had a home on Skinny Atlas Lake. Peter was there often, close to Watkins Glen.
Oh, wow, how neat.
I used to work right in Skinny Atlas doing orthopedics for 2 years, John. So I know exactly where you're talking about. I appreciate you hooking up DragBoss Garage. Thank you, John. Someone asked another question too about, they said talk about the Pinto, which we kind of already did, but maybe you could just do just a quick recap of the Pinto. Like how fast did it go? What did you put in it?
So again, it was a 302 Windsor V8. We had a Torker manifold. Later, I did a single Dominator, not a Dominator, a single tunnel ram with a 750, but in the picture you have is a Torker.
Yep.
Herbert and Meek did the engine swap into the chassis, and they're the ones that built the headers. Pretty unique that the headers couldn't fit down the side, so they went over the front and down below. Crane cam, ignition, 488s in the rear on a 9-inch and the top loader transmission. And it was a fast car because it was light. I mean, it's like the old Shelby adage, you know, if you make a car that's light and put, you know, big cubic inch in power, you know, when I'm going next to a Z28 that maybe has got more power, you know, and I'm 1,000 pounds lighter, that's a big difference. And Johnny didn't like to lose.
Hey, DVG, happy Sunday. Thanks, R-Dub Falco. Appreciate it. Bruce, there's a question from Bruce. Did PSC invent air valve springs for FE engines?
That's a great question. He did. And, you know, it's something he was really into. And I don't know that they lasted is the issue. His thing was, at the time, that's why we used the Vascojet springs. It was 775 inch lift. You know, it took tremendous pressure to go that many RPMs and not have valve float. So his thing was that when springs fatigue over time, where they break and you can, you know, suck a valve, he developed these air valve springs where he had these like machined aluminum cups that sat down where a valve spring would normally go. Yep. And then he had like a retainer with like a Viton oil O-ring on it that made it airtight. So he could pump as much pressure in those as he wanted it to be to make it not float. But my own thinking, I know when he did it, I mean, I never saw it in one of his engines to have any personal experience, but it seemed to me that if something was doing 7,000 or 8,000 RPM, I'm thinking, how long could those rubber things last before, you know, maybe they had to be redone every you know, couple of races. I don't know that, but he did have that and marketed it. I remember it was in his catalog, but that was for the FE engine with a shaft, and it had Harlan Shark rocker arms.
Thanks, Bruce, for the question. Ramon Tubbs. Hey, Tim and John. Good to see you here, my friend. Glad you're here. Here's a question for you, John. Nathan Grobelny. Now, Nathan, I got to tell you, him and I made a deal just a couple of weeks ago, and I traded a carburetor to him for that 6-cylinder Cleveland head that's sitting over here, which my wife made a video, but I'm going to make another video about it. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Nathan. We're going to build something with that. We've got some plans for that.
Compression was 13-to-1 Vinolias with gas ports.
There you go. I thought it'd be more. They look like a bigger dome than that when I was looking at the pictures. You know?
13, and we did full floating rods, of course, which everybody did. Yep. And I know at the time, spiral locks or snap rings were the two choice to hold the wrist pin in. And I remember we chose the snap rings because they're thicker. And Paul ordered the pistons from Vinolia in a double gap so that you put one snap ring with a snap ring has kind of a beveled side and a machine side. So you put the first one in the machine side towards the wrist pin.
Yep.
And the other one you turn around and the machine side goes to the outer edge of the piston. And that way you have machined on both edges, but you have double thickness. And that was the trick. And of course you would turn the snap rings 180 of each other, you know, like the little holes at the top and the little holes at the bottom. So if they turn, they can never line up type of thing.
Thank you. Ricky's House of Crap. I like that name. What did the X's and Y's lifter valve mean? Did they have anything to do with higher nickel? No. You know, the X's and Y's were there because those blocks had an issue of cracking in that area of the valley. So they put those X's and Y's to try to make it a little bit stronger. That's the story that I've heard. Not necessarily had anything to do with a high nickel block.
And that's why I did all the deburring, as you saw. Every corner, every radius, you wanted to make it and get all the casting mark off because that makes it easier to crack.
Thanks, Ricky's House of Crap. Let's see. Coffee Can 74. Hey, guys, always a big Cleveland fan and Pro Stock fan. These live streams are great. Thank you. I appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks, guys.
I really do. You know, I love Pro Stocks and I love Cleveland's. They go hand in hand. So thank you. Nathan, appreciate it. Thank you for being here. So let's go back to some of the pictures. I mean, we kind of
those engine pictures,
quite a bit.
And we didn't have all these great blocks you can get now. You know, I remember when I sold my car, they were just sort of rumor that there's an Australian block that they're making in Australia that was supposed to be a little heavier, but you just didn't have the choices. You know, when I see the heads, you brought out the great stuff that Bob Glidden invented on those chambers, angling them. Now all these guys, Chevy Fords, when you buy them, they're already made like that. But he had to think of that, you know, and experiment. That's incredible. Those guys were legends.
That's another reason he was faster than the other guys.
That's exactly right. I used to tell you that when we used to go to the track, you know, Bob was always nice, but he was like a workaholic. I mean, if he would have talked to you, you know that you're kind of, wait till he's totally done because you don't want to bother him. You can see he's really busy. Where Don would always kind of, you pick your time, but really friendly and nice to talk to. But Bob would have always put the towels on his intake manifold. And we know that these guys did things with their intake, but now that I've seen all the stuff you showed about the heads, I almost think he did that as a deception. Everybody's looking at the intakes there. What secret did he do? And it's in those heads.
And he had a ton of work to the intake, but you're right. Angle mill in the heads.
Oh, yeah.
Filled up the whole top of the port. You can't see them here, but they're all brazed at the top to raise that port up in the intake.
Right. So, and I think I mentioned on the heads, or if I didn't mention, Mullen and Company did the heads. That's the same company that they were in Carson, right next to Mary's mom's house, actually. Mullen and Company, and they did the high port heads, which did Dyno Don's too.
Okay.
Great cylinder head shop.
I think we'll talk.
And now you showed me the aluminum ones. They're already raised up. You don't have to put the plates anywhere. Things have changed.
I'm telling you that, and those heads right there. I mean, just the way they were with very little work, they're making 750 horsepower, just very little work. So that iron head that's sitting back here, you can see, which is basically the same thing in iron. Those cars were making, Glidden, Dyno, they were making upwards 800 horsepower.
Right. We were about 750, 760. And you're right. They were about 800. And in case some of the guys don't know, in that time period, the Cleveland made about 2.2 horsepower per cubic inch. And most engines, they feel like if you can make 2 horsepower per cubic inch, that was a great ratio. So because of that, they handicapped the Clevelands. So we had to run 7.33 pounds per cubic inch of displacement. And that's why Glidden and Dyno later, as I learned on your show, started doing like 340 cubes to drop some of the weight off.
Right.
Where the small block Chevy was 695, and the big block, I believe, was either 7.0 or 705. Even the Hemi was less.
7.10.
Yeah, 7.10. So that was a lot of extra weight you had to carry. And later, when the race rules changed, and they said you could go up to 500 cubic inches, as much horsepower as you can build, and no less than 2,350 pounds. To me, that's a fair thing, because that's almost like street racing. We're all the same inches, we're the same weight, who's better? But the handicap was tough, and yet the Clevelands were still very, very competitive.
Let me see if I can bring this picture
All
up.
right, that's the one that you'll see the pan good, Tim. That's in my dad's garage.
I don't think I have a big picture of that because I had to upload these, but I have, let's see, this one here. Let's make this big. This is when it was in the car.
That was when Paul Rabeshi bought the car for me, and he came from Connecticut. That's my motor in his car, and I put Willie Rell's stickers on the valve covers.
I see it there. Okay.
Yeah. And then we had the Bill Million vacuum pan. That was a popular system at the time. They had a check valve that welded into the collector on the headers. Yep. So as you're revving, it would draw crankcase pressure out of the engine to make it less chance of pressure causing leaks or anything like that. It was a good system. We had the dual 64-64 dominators, as we talked about. Sure. Interlee injection made a beautiful throttle linkage thing, all stainless steel splined with aluminum brackets. It was just wonderful. You could make any kind of adjustment, tighten the Allen, and it worked on those carburetors wonderfully.
I think this is a better picture.
There it is. Yeah. So that little stand, that shows you the age. That's my dad's little Nissan Datsun truck. I think they called him back then a Datsun.
Yeah.
That was in his garage, and after the motor was done, I kept it there because the little garage where the car was didn't have enough room. And my friend Larry Famigetti, I mentioned him and his brother had the welding shop, so he built that little chassis dolly for me, exactly for the motor plate and the rear to fit that Cleveland, so you could roll around safely. And that's when Paul Rabeshi came. And when he saw the motor in person and saw the photos, because he originally told me he just wanted the chassis, that he had a Roush motor. He goes, I don't need a motor. But then when he saw it in person, he goes, how much for the both? and he ended up buying them, which was great, because I lost money on the car and I made some money on the motor, so it helped me get close to break even.
Wow. I think here's a picture after, because let's put it this way. You got the engine, it's finished. What was left of the car before you sold it to him?
So left of the car would be the electrical wiring,
yep.
The state braided lines, the plumbing,
yep.
the paint job, and the Lenco. The Lenco back then, I want to say it was close to $4,000. I think in the 70s. That was a big one. Very much so. And we had mentioned on an earlier thing too. I forgot the fiberglass panels, and everybody ran these. We had the front end, the hood, the front and rear bumper, and the deck lid. And I don't remember the company. I know the hood scoop, which was nice. It was made by Harwood, but I don't remember who was the company that was into the fiberglass. But I don't care if you had a Chevy, Chrysler, Ford, or whatever. The quality was absolutely horrible. The gaps, there's not a Ford or a Chevy Pro Stock. You see old photos of them. When you see where the front ends come to the body, you know, we would hope to have like an 1/8 or a 3/16 gap like you would from a new car from the factory, and it was not. But besides that, they were so warped. I could not believe it. And when I mentioned earlier about Buxton boats, when I was at Peyton Lincoln Mercury, Barry Buxton was our tune-up guy, very sharp guy, and he owned a drag hull company with his brother Jim. Jim was the main worker in there, and Barry did it on the side because he was a mechanic. So I got Jim to do the body work on the fiberglass because it was so warped. When he sprayed some of like a fog of black on the hood and then started block sanding, I mean, you would have thought I got this out of a 40-year-old junkyard car and it's brand new out of the box. So you can't count how many hours he spent getting that flat, because my paint scheme was going to be a little more stunning than I would say Paul did. I really liked Dino Don's paint scheme a lot. I loved how it followed the body lines of the Mustang too, but mine was going to have more of a red background and then some orange and black and yellow of kind of following those stripes. So if you're putting any kind of black, as you know, the car's got to be straight. So that's why I picked that fiberglass boat company, because I thought, you know, they do a fiberglass every day, where normal body shops dealing with metal panels.
Here's a question for you, John. Let's see. Anomalous one. Did you race in Division 7 Pro Stock back in the 70s? Who was your primary competition?
Well, I was never able to race this car. As we said, I wasn't able to finish, so I did not race in that. But in those days when we used to go to Orange County, Irwindale, and Pomona, of course, the main players are the guys we know, you know, Bob Glidden, Dino Don, Gap and Roush. The AMC guys were M&M boys, and what's that guy's name?
Manarino, Maskin.
Yeah, Manarino. And Maskins. The Chevys, you had Iconio and Allen, Grumpy Bill Jenkins, Sonny Bryant, Rear Morrison. Those were all fast. Chryslers, you had Dick Landy, Butch Leal, Sox and Martin. Those were your main players. Again, as I said, Lee Hunter was a local guy that was competitive. I remember Gordy Rivera had, I felt, the closest cleanliness car to mine. That's one of the cleanest Pro Stocks. It was a Chevy Monza. He was from Yuma, Arizona. That was a very clean car. But that was the main players in it, I would say. And Glidden and Dino were the, you know, probably about the tops.
Frankie Stein. You, sir, are the real drag boss. Thank you for all your videos. Thank you, Frankie, I appreciate that.
Tim is.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Here's a question here, and I can answer it if you can't. It's pretty, I think, well, let's just read it. Ricky's House of Crap. Why did you have a water pump on a 7-second car?
Well, you had to have water circulating. And so the picture you saw in my dad's garage, everybody ran those, Moroso made these little electric water pump motors with a cogged belt. So the water pump was on, but it turned at a much slower speed, because if you're going 8,000 RPM, that stuff's going to cavitate. So even though the engine is flying, the electric motor was determining the water pump speed was probably more like a car going 2,500 RPM. And you had to have water circulate through it. You're warming it up, you know, getting ready to come into the lane. You're doing your burnouts. You're doing the pass through, and you're coming down the strip. So, you know, you're going to overheat it. And
they drove the cars. They didn't tow them back then.
Yeah, that's right. You drove the
car and drive it back to the pits.
Everybody had those, Chevy, Ford, or whatever. That was a standard deal, that little electric pump. So
you sold. We talked about what you had to finish to sell it. You sold it to Paul. You know, here's a picture of the interior. Let me get it to the big view so we can see it. I put it up on the little tiny screen, and I'll kind of show you where it is, if I have it. Hopefully, well, I don't think I have it. Darn it! But if you look up here, oh no, there it is.
Yeah, so he took this picture. It's not quite as clear as mine. I did all mine with a 35 millimeter. Ironically, it was a Minolta, because that's Dino Don's sponsor was Minolta. So I bought Mary a Minolta camera. That's what I used. But he took this picture for me, which was great. You could see Willie Rolls. Look at those beautiful pedals, all anodized with the holes drilled, the tin around the steering column. But, you know, he had the Lenco there. That's the main thing. And then the panels that Willie built for the center tunnel, once they cut the hole for the Lenco, then I can see they added the vinyl upholstery to that to match the rest of the car.
Wow, that's amazing. And then there's the picture of it in the car. Now, here's what one of your favorite pictures, I think you told me here.
Yeah, this is it, man. When you saw me sitting in that car, I wasn't fitting. I was dreaming of the day that I could hear that motor and nail it and feel that thing coming up even with wheelie bars. I used to dream about that. And again, it's a part of my life that never had proper closure. You've really helped me by, getting this out. And I'm so excited that people, we had almost 3,000 views. I'm shocked that, a car from the 45 years ago, there's that much interest. But
there's 80 people here right now watching.
Right. So. And Paul was nice enough to offer my good friend Larry. Like we've been best friends for 53 years, but he offered. He said, John, if you guys want to fly back here, I'll take you for a ride in the car. You get to hear and feel your car. So we talked about it, and we just had got the money. We bought the house, and getting ready to start the family. And at the time, it probably would have been with hotel and airfare, $1,000, $1,500, which was a lot at the time. And I remember, though, that my wife, Mary, at the time, I'm sure thought if he goes back there and hears and feels that car, he's going to want to get all into it again, So I had to think, like, there's probably truth to that. Once you feel that, how could you ever forget it? But now that this many years have passed, Larry and I have talked commonly and saying, like, God, we should have just credit carded it, whatever, so you could have got to feel it. He ran it. He was in Connecticut, so he ran in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and tracks like that. He told me in a letter, and when he sent some of these photos, they ran 877, which was, a very competitive time for them. Glidden had the record at 855. There you go, right there. Is that a good one?
Yeah.
But he said he won Best Engineered Pro Stock and Best Appearing Pro Stock at 2 meets back there. I'm telling you, this car, well, again, my paint job would have been, I think, a little more pizzazz, but the car detail, when you used to go to the drags and bend down on your knees and look underneath, look in the back, which I did all the time. I was trying to get ideas. I understand. I'm not ranking them. Guys are doing this for a living. They're trying to make money. Mm-hmm. They're not worried about the polish. For me, this was something I wanted to do. I know I was never going to be able to go to all the meets around the country, but I figured I could go to, Arizona, California, that type of thing. And it had to be like, show car clean, but fast. It wasn't like I was one of those guys that says, if it don't go, chrome it. It had to look good, but it had to haul ass, and the motors were my baby.
Wow. Yeah, I love these pictures, to see that thing launch, do a smoky burnout.
Yeah.
So I had put your video on Facebook and a few different groups. And actually, Paul answered one of the questions, or commented.
Paul Rabeshi or
Rabeshi? Okay. Answered back and said, yeah, because we said, don't know whatever happened to the car, wonder what, no idea or closure on it. And then he commented, he said, I don't know. So he ran it. He must have sold it and doesn't know whatever happened to it. And I messaged him.
I tried to reach out to him. I know that I did some research, and after he sold the Mustang, whatever year he did primarily Pontiac Pro Stocks. I know that he has a photo gallery on, if you look up Paul Rabeshi Racing, there's like 5 or 6 Pontiac Pro Stocks that Willie built. And I believe his driver of my car and some of the Pontiacs was Kenny Delco, who was fairly well known in that part of the country. But I just, when I was trying to reach out to him, my hope was that I wonder if he had like a home movie on 8mm where I could actually, see it and hear it, type of thing. I didn't know if he did or not, but I was sure appreciative of the photos he sent me, and he told me about the times. He also told me about the engine RPM, because I built the motor. I said, God, that's a great time. What did you shift at and so forth? He told me that the guy went off the line at 95 to 9,600, and they're shifting at $9,000 to 9,100 in the shifts. And when he said that, excuse my French, but I said, man, I probably wouldn't have the guts to, being I built the motor, I'd be worried about if the thing exploded, I'm out all that money. I couldn't believe it. I was like happily shocked at, wow, that really made me feel how much work we did on the motor, that it was that dependable and that much RPM. That's a lot of RPM. I probably wouldn't have the balls to do it, quite frankly.
There you are.
I probably would have went at 8,800 or something.
I don't have anything that's going to go $9,000, but I'm going to get my wife's car done. That motor back there we're working on, and that thing made 615 at $8,000. So I'd like to drop the clutch at $6,000 and see how it feels. You know what I mean?
You want to tell the guys what you told me today? The story about the weight of your Cougar?
I forgot what we were talking about.
This would be a good one to your fans. He said to me, John, you don't know what it's like. I mean, I've been working on this thing for like 5 years. I said, Unfortunately, I do know what it's like. I've been waiting 44 years. to hear mine, but you're going to be hearing yours pretty soon, so I'm happy for you.
I'm trying. You know, it's been, like I said, it's been 5 years of going on and off with COVID. Did a big setback on a bunch of stuff, and that feeling, you know, I've heard it run before. I know what it's like to race it and drive.
Right.
You've never had that, and I just wish knew what happened to that engine in that car.
Yeah, really, I think you said you found somebody that said they had the heads. Was that correct or not?
Oh yeah. And I forgot how we found out. Jimmy Huff told me he had a set of the. He
said one of the heads was damaged because it blew up or something.
Yes, and he still has one. He's gonna get pictures and he'll tear it out. He's got probably 25 heads. So I'll have to message him again. He may have forgotten, but I'd like to get that and then send it to you and see if you can identify it and say, yeah, this is it. But yeah,
the clutch, by the way, was a Hayes Mark 12 with a billet flywheel too. I just was looking at my notes, see if I've forgotten anything that might be of interest.
Well, I'll tell you, that thing's good, man, to hold up for that RPM.
Yeah.
You know, let's see did any of you guys remember Dave Lyle? Oh yeah, sure we do.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, in fact, I had messaged him. He said he wants to do a live chat, but it's a matter of us getting our schedules together. But yeah, right. That's cool. Here's one for you. Did you ever run at LACR in Palmdale before they shut it down?
No. The tracks for us would, like I said, would be Pomona, Irwindale, Orange County International Raceway, which is obviously closed since, as did Irwindale. And then when I was young, when I blew up the Pinto 4-cylinder, that was at Lions Drag Strip. That was a track really close to Pedro in Wilmington.
Yeah.
And then now it's all the longshoring industry, the container ships are all where that track used to be. But that was neat. We used to be able to go there, you know, like on a Friday night, 20 minutes, and you're at a drag strip. And they just made it kind of harder and harder to find them. Irwindale closed down, Orange County. So they don't, and you know, the World Finals years ago was at Ontario Speedway.
Yes.
The Winter Nationals were at Pomona, and the World Finals were at Ontario. And when they closed that, they do both at Pomona, which is a really good track. Nice place to watch races. And in the day, you know, when I haven't been in a long time, but when you see the pictures and stuff, you know, everything's roped off. It's so much bigger now, and you can't really get close to the guys. In the day, when those pictures I'm showing you of Dino Don, I'm 6 feet away. Now, if he's working, I'm going to show respect. I'm not going to bother the guy. Sure. But when he's, you know, having a coffee or something, hey, Don, you know, great run. Hope you do good this one. And John Causey was his crew chief. He's one of my idols. I mean, talk about a Ford building engine legend, you know, and Causey had long blonde hair there. And now, you know, when you see on his side, he's, you know, a little thin on the hair as he's gotten older. But it's so neat to see those guys, you know, in the 20s. And Dino Don was almost 50, you know, when we used to watch him in there, you know. So that's why in these stories I knew I could give you, because I was in my, you know, maybe 22 to 24 range throughout this time period. So it's really fresh in my mind, you know. And like I said, all our buddies, we used to go to all those races and just love seeing those guys, taking the pictures and seeing them up close. And it was exciting.
There's a couple questions. I'm going to go out of order because there's one. So we'll talk. John, appreciate the question, my friend. Oh, John, Connecticut Dragway long gone.
Okay.
Kenny was his driver.
It was.
That car still is somewhere, I believe. There were several Mustang 2 bracket cars racing in the Northeast in the 80s. So here's a now keep in mind, Kenny. Harry T. Garland III. Have you tried to contact Kenny Delco? He still races in Pro Stock.
I did. I reached out to him. I found his Facebook thing, and I reached out twice because I thought he might be able to tell me some information about Paul Rebeschi, because I don't know what age Paul was when he bought my car. I know he was older than me, but I've tried all these numbers I found online of his business and so forth, and nobody ever answers anything. So I didn't know, you know, if he was still alive or not, but you got a response. So I'm glad he is. But I did try to reach out to Kenny Delco, and I never did get a response.
I'll see if I'll try getting a hold
Well, you're the drag boss. He might call you, but.
Well, you know, I keep saying this over and over. Erica Enders, who's a, you know, 5-time Pro Stock champion. She's racing now. I think
she's lights out, boy. She's a great driver.
She's going to be on a live chat, but you know, she's so hard to get a hold of. She told me, don't give up on me. I promise I'll do it. It's just, I'm so busy. So once we get her on here, we'll get a hold of Kenny Delco. She may know him, and we'll see if we can get this puzzle put back together and come up with a mystery, because I'm still trying to figure it all out.
Pretty soon, Tim's going to call me and say, John, I got your Mustang in my shop. Here's a video.
Hey,
Then this time I'm going to say I'm flying out.
All right. And then you can help me with this damn internet because I'm.
That's right. I'll help you with the internet and the audio video.
Let's see. Anomalous one. Good on you, Tim. That's why you're the drag boss, my friend.
That's right.
Legend. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, we're pretty much been on here for an hour and 14 minutes.
Okay.
We had like just 90 people a minute ago. So I think what we're going to do is start wrapping it up.
Okay.
And because I don't want to keep beating a dead horse.
Yeah, I got you.
Some guys just, I don't want them to tune out and say, oh, the guys aren't going anywhere with this conversation. But what really, I think, hopefully helped you in this is that it brought some closure. Like you said, it did bring some closure to the fact that, look, you put all this blood, sweat, and tears into this project, this Mustang 2, this Pro Stock, and then had to sell it. But you got a family out of it. And whether it was with Mary or Jeanette, the bottom line is it wouldn't, if you look at the way that things fall in place, it would have never happened if you didn't sell it.
Yeah, that's right. She was very supportive, but like I said, when we sold it, we got our first house. We had 2 beautiful daughters later, and like I said, they're grown up now. They're 39, and then when I married Jeanette in 1995, we have a beautiful daughter. It's 33. All the girls get along great. We got 5 grandkids that I've sent you photos. They're just adorable, and really proud of my daughters. They're special, special people, and thankful to be their dad.
And I hope one day my girls will do the same. And that's another reason I do this channel, not just to record Pro Stock history, but it's really a personal diary. I say this many times, but I have like 5 pictures or 6 pictures of my mom and dad. That's it.
Right.
We didn't have cameras back then. We didn't have the money for that there was no video. So I want this to be back a record, a video. My kids go, hey, there's dad in the garage, DragBoss garage.
Well, there's dad when he was young and in his prime. My dad was a very modest income guy, really nice guy, but he was really into photography. He would be so proud of, Tani, who's a professional photographer, and she sent you the stuff that helped. But he always took photos of things and won many prizes in the newspaper. So it was just logical for me, the way I was raised, the way watching him, that I should take a lot of photos of my stuff in stages. And now all these years later, when I look at the motor and I remember the cam specs and this and that, I don't know how I remember, it just like flows into my head when I look at them. I'm so glad I got those detailed pictures. But my feeling was on the closure that I felt like if a lot of people that are kind of race knowledgeable that like are on your channel saw this, that they would agree that I'm not just talking. This is one of the cleanest Pro Stocks you ever seen. And luckily it was a Ford, because I know you're nice to all the guys, but I'm not a Chevy guy. I'm a Ford guy.
I like anything with an engine. I don't care if it's a lawnmower. This is good. John Salvatierra. Paul was born in early '59, if my memory is correct. His father ran the construction company.
That's correct. The father, I know, passed away, same name, Paul Rabeshi Sr. I looked that up, but I didn't know what year he was born. So he was only 5 years older than me then. So I'm 68. So he was, 73 about now.
And that's what it was, though. It was Paul Rabeshi Jr. that we're talking about.
That's correct. Yeah, Junior.
We're talking about Junior.
Right.
Okay.
And it wasn't a small construction. It wasn't like a remodeling company. They're like a pretty well-known builder, I understand, on the East Coast. It was a large operation. But when I tried to reach out to him and I'd look at those business numbers and they'd ring and nobody answers. You leave messages time after time. My daughter found a cell number on file. I couldn't get anybody to answer anything. So I never physically talked to him other than when he sent me the photos and told me about the times and the engine RPM.
Okay.
He was a nice guy too, real nice guy.
Dempsey Hardy drove a Firebird and Pro Stock for Paul Rabeshi back in the day. I have a hero card of it. Wow.
That sounds right, because like I said, when I saw his racing site, it's all Pontiac stuff after the Mustang. So he was into that brand apparently.
But we're talking about Junior though, correct?
Junior, yeah. The father never raced.
Okay. Anthony Icovino. Thanks, guys. Good show. John, you rang a lot of bells. OCIR was my local drag strip. Went many times to Santa Ana, California. Thanks again. That
was a great track. I really liked that track a lot. A lot nicer than Lions. It was farther, but a lot nicer. Well, guys, and Dino Don lived in Orange County for a lot of years, so you used to see him there practicing a lot, if you went down there. And again, he was just great to talk to. Super guy.
Before he went to Georgia, I think he moved to Atlanta.
Yeah, and then he went to Georgia. But when he passed away, I think it was in that special that his nephew did was in California again.
Nice. Well, let's end it there, John.
Okay.
So I appreciate all you guys being here at DragBoss Garage. Stay tuned for all the videos we're going to show you, and we're going to find John's car, Dino John's car. You watch. Something's going to happen. Someone's going to watch this. It's going to show up. So stay tuned for that.
If it does, we may